in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I am your host, Ralph Brogden. You know, we try to find a balance between life and business, and I believe that we're trying to build a great business so that we can live a great life. One thing about life is that none of us are getting out of life alive. We all have a deadline that we are working against because we are not immortal. At some point, we are going to experience death ourselves, and we also experience the grief of losing loved ones. And so learning how to deal with that and cope with that is important so that we can accept it and flourish and even thrive in our lives again. And I am not an expert on how to do that, but we do have someone who is an expert and can help us with that. Her name is Alyson Franz, and she is a grief and trauma healing expert, a speaker, and author of the book, The Grief Cure Method, which is a unique and powerful way to heal deeply from grief and loss, and it trains other helping professionals in this method as well. So, Alyson Franz, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you. I know that this can really hit people hard, and when we're dealing with these things, it seems like it's really hard to get back to square one. We feel like that we're out of balance, and I know that it's a process that sooner or later everyone is going to experience. And so I'm really interested in how you go about dealing with this in the grief cure method. First, tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you interested in working with people in this area? What's your story?
So, originally, in my 20s, I was trained as a therapist, and I did traditional work for a while, and eventually ended up in private practice. And around 8 or 9 years ago, I went through a super hard time in my life. My father had passed away, and my life was going into a downward spiral, and I needed an intervention, and none of the traditional approaches were working for me. I couldn't sleep. I was a mess. I could barely make it through the day at work. And there I was, a healing professional, and I myself was suffering very deeply. So that eventually led me to start looking into non-traditional methods. And sure enough, I made up my mind that I was going to heal from this one way or another, even though all of the gurus and experts were saying that you can't heal completely from grief. You just got to cope with your feelings. You're going to deal with some amount of this pain for the rest of your life. I completely rejected that. That's where you and I are alike. We're rebels.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just completely rejected that. And I said, no way, I'm going to find a way to heal from this. There's got to be something that's causing this. And somehow, some way, I don't know when, but I'm going to figure this out.
I love that attitude. I love the rebel spirit of saying, I'm not going to just accept what everyone else says that I have to accept in life, in business, or in this process of grief. Now, you mentioned traditional methods of dealing with grief. What are some of those traditional methods that people will typically try that in your case, and probably in a lot of people's cases, didn't work?
Traditional psychotherapy and medication. I I tried lots of different types of traditional psychotherapies. And I even tried something that's not traditional called EMDR, which is considered to be more effective for deeper issues, and that didn't work for me either. And it was recommended to me to take medication, and I refused that because again, I'm a rebel, and I just knew deep down, I was like, this is not a medication issue. There's another solution. I could feel it. And so I refused medication. I did try to take some sort of vitamin supplement type thing periodically, which I don't think it did much for me. And yeah, that's what I tried. That's what was recommended to me. It was also recommended to me that I read a book called I Wasn't Ready to Say Goodbye, and I refused to read that too.
So I bet you are a difficult patient, but I bet you're a difficult client. Remind me not to coach you. Never coach another rebel because they don't follow instructions very well. But you were determined to find your own path. And so for you, the solution was not drugs. It wasn't a certain type of therapy. It wasn't reading someone's book. What did you come across? What was the answer for you?
Well, for me, I think I just have a super strong intuition. And when something's not right to me, I just will not follow it. And I just could feel in my heart that there was another solution. I had no idea what it was going to be or when I was going to find it. But the way it came to me was after I just sort of set that intention in my mind, a couple of months later, I got a flyer in the mail that said revolutionary healing techniques, totally outside the paradigm of, today's healing modalities and things that will change your life. And I looked at this flyer and it was like magical to me. And I was like, yes, this is it.
This is it. It's revolutionary. Yeah. It's got my name all over it, right?
Exactly. And so I went to that training. It was with a man named Henry Grayson, and Henry would eventually become my mentor. And I did tons of work with Henry, training and also personal work. And I also worked with some of his colleagues, and it totally changed my life. And I became a personal growth junkie, hungry to learn anything and everything I could that was sort of outside of the box. And I really developed myself in very deep ways so that I could have unshakable peace in my life. And now I pretty much have it.
Yeah, but that's pretty amazing. So you are the founder of the Grief Cure Method. You are also the author of the Amazon best-selling book by the same name, The Grief Cure, A Revolutionary Guide to Healing from Loss. So what is the Grief Cure Method? Give us the overview of what that's all about.
The Grief Cure Method, it's a 4-step process that pretty much turns everything else you've ever heard about healing from grief upside down. Mm-hmm. So it looks at grief from a very deep angle. Typically, in traditional healing, we look at grief as it's the loss of a person, it's the loss of a relationship, it's the loss of something or a position, maybe a beloved pet, whatever it is, it's a loss of something that's causing that pain. But what I actually do is we take a much deeper look at grief and see what actually causes this deep, heavy emotion. And it's actually not just the loss. That's a part of it. But there's actually 5 components to it. And I break that down in my book. And so the 4-step process is really about knowing and believing that you have the power to heal and addressing all these root causes of grief, which is that you need to use energy psychology to really release the pain from these losses in a very comprehensive way. You also need to revitalize yourself, your self-love and your spirituality, which actually ties into the loss. And this is actually an opportunity for transformation. That's my 4th step. And if you read the whole book, it all ties together. A lot of people will say, how can I transform? Because, I'm stuck in this terrible, heavy emotional pain. But the difference is, in my process, you will heal to your core and you'll be ready for that change. And you'll be able to make positive changes in your life that you might not even think are possible.
Interesting. So then in this case, in the death of a loved one, or any kind of loss, that loss becomes an opportunity for personal transformation by how? Shifting how we view that? Is that how it works?
So what actually happens is, when you heal from the components of grief, you actually sort of become a more whole person, and you'll be more in tune with what a more fulfilling life would be for you. And that's what makes it easy to step into that, because you actually heal not only from the loss, you also heal from the blind spots that are related to the loss that you don't even know you're suffering from. And that's part of what's blocking you from really living a fulfilling life.
Gotcha. Well, now you mentioned 5 things that is contributing to this feeling of grief, and that you said it is related to what we have lost or who we have lost, which seems what most people would think and what most people would assume. But you're saying there's 5 other things. You don't have to name all 5, but give us an example of what is causing me to feel the way I'm feeling, other than just the fact that I have lost someone who's been very close to me.
So there is not only that loss is a part of it. Mm-hmm. However, as a result of that loss, right, we have sort of a negative reaction to that, and we develop this heavy emotion that is in reaction to the loss. And as a result of that heavy emotion, we develop this really negative conclusion, and we create these sort of negative beliefs about what has happened, which triggers fear. And those negative beliefs and the fears actually link to old traumas and old upsetting events, and that activates things subconsciously and adds to your pain. So grief, it's actually sort of like a cluster of things, but because the loss has triggered it, we think it's just about the loss, but that is just the superficial presentation of it. If you go into your subconscious, there's actually all this other stuff there.
So then the loss is really a triggering mechanism for something else that is happening on a deeper level. And maybe that explains, if I'm understanding you correctly, maybe that explains why different people handle grief differently. Some people are able to grieve and then move on, and others struggle. And so maybe that is illustrative, or it illustrates what you're talking about, that the grief or the event is just a trigger. It's not the cause. It's not the ultimate cause. There's other things going on in different people, and that's why some people respond and react to grief differently. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. Bingo.
Okay. Excellent. Yep. So, well, that's useful to know, because I know in my moments of grief, and I have found when I lose a loved one, different people in my family respond to that differently than I do. And so it is a very emotional time, and people just deal with it differently. You're saying it's not about the loss itself, or it's not totally about the loss, but there are other things going on beneath the surface that we need to deal with. And just medicating that, or getting counseling or psychotherapy to deal with the loss, is really only dealing with the triggering event. It's not dealing with the underlying symptoms.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. What can someone begin to do? And I realize probably the best thing to do is read your book, right? But
Yes.
what can someone begin to do? Let's say they're listening to this right now and it begins to resonate with them. And they're thinking, man, I think what Alyson is saying makes sense. There's other things going on, but what can they begin to do right now to see some immediate improvement, maybe in their emotion or in their mental state, how they're viewing the event or whatever? Do you have like a 2 or 3 step self-help process that would help our listeners out?
Well, I think the first thing that you really need to know is what you need to do is really know and believe that you have the power to heal, and your body is designed to help you heal from this. And I think that is the most important first step, because everything you do after that is going to be reflective of whether or not you believe that. So if you truly believe that, and I believe that's how I started my healing process, I just completely rejected the fact that I was I was 29 years old and I might be in pain for the rest of my life, miserable and unable to sleep. So, but when I just totally knew in my heart and accepted that, like, no, it doesn't have to be like this, things just started falling into place for me. A couple months later, I had, I got this flyer in the mail. A couple months after that, I went to the training, and then one event after another just started to unravel for me. And there was a path there for me to totally turn this around and use it in miraculous ways, really. I've helped tons of people who have been suffering for years and sometimes decades from these losses to heal totally after they've been told they have no hope, or maybe they've, tried 5-10 interventions and nothing's worked.
Yeah. So the first step then is to realize that you can heal from this, that it is not something that you are stuck with forever, or that you'll never be able to get over it, no matter how dark and how bad things look right now. And it is normal. It is natural to feel that sense of loss. But what you're saying is that you do have the power to heal, and that there is a path people can take, and that they can expect that they can recover and they will recover.
Yes, absolutely. You have to hold true to that belief, because there are people who are going to tell you it's not possible, but I promise it is. And, I don't know what your path is going to be, if you're going to sort of get better on your own, or if you're going to need interventions, but don't doubt that there's an intervention for you, because there is.
Now, with the people that you work with, how long does it typically take them to break free from those internal barriers and achieve that level of healing that they can say, I can see that there's a difference. I can sense and feel that, yes, I am getting better, and yes, I am healing from this. How long does your process take?
A lot of people see a big difference within a month or two. And that's a fairly short time. And there are some people who take longer. It might take 3 or 4 or 5 months, but generally it's not a terribly long process in terms of, things like sleep and just, feeling better in general. People generally feel a shift pretty quickly. Now, when it comes to the transformation, sometimes that happens quickly. Sometimes it takes a while longer, depending upon where you're at in your life. And there's a lot of different variables for that. However, in terms of just feeling better and being able to get through your day, the transformation happens fast.
Well, and so that's encouraging. And if you're struggling with this, if any of our listeners need to reach out to Alyson, I hope that you'll check her out. Where's the best way, and what is the best way for them to connect with you?
You can get a copy of my book. You can actually get a free copy of my book at thegriefcurebook.com. And that's a great way you can connect with me. You'll get my email address when you opt in for the book. You'll be able to respond directly to the email that sends you the book.
Perfect. Yeah, so check that out and download that. It's a free book. You can't argue with free. It's The Grief Cure Book by Alyson Franz. It's a #1 Amazon bestseller, and so go check that out. We'll have that link on the website as well. It's at thegriefcurebook.com, and you'll see that very nicely designed website if you go there and check it out. Alyson, I think this gives hope to people who are really trying to break through their grief and deal with the emotional pain that a loss like this can have. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom and your experience with us. If you could leave us with a final thought or a word of wisdom, what would you like to share with our listeners as we close?
I just say, we live in an amazing time where there's just so much support for any issue you might be facing, whether it be grief or something else. Just don't be afraid to get whatever support you need or to take the steps that you need in order to move forward, because I just believe we're unlimited beings with unlimited potential, and that's what really fulfills us, and that's what we're really here to be. So just don't let anything hold you back. Take whatever steps you need to move forward in life, and be fearless. Yes, and know that you have the power to heal. That's exactly.
So critical, and I appreciate you sharing that with us today. I've been speaking with Alyson Franz. She is a grief and trauma healing expert, a speaker, and a best-selling author of the book, The Grief Cure, A Revolutionary Guide to Healing from Loss. You can download that for free at thegriefcurebook.com. Alyson, it's been a real pleasure to get to know you. Thanks so much for being on Rebelpreneur Radio today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.